Hi, this is Ibarionex from The Candid Frame, and we're here with another video. One of the things that I am a big proponent of when I'm teaching photography to people is this whole concept of slowing down. I think it's really important and essential for photographers, especially street photographers, to learn how to really slow down, to not merely just walk and walk and walk and grab the occasional shot and then move on to the next subject. I think that kind of shooting, though it may provide you the occasional winning shot, really doesn't provide any means by which you can be consistent or that you can make sure that the potential of the moment really plays out into a really successful photograph. Because if you're just rushing and just making pictures and trying to catch as catch can, you can get really sloppy in terms of your framing and your composition, and that's really all that we have as the photographer. And the pictures that I've chosen today allow me to emphasize a particular part of my shooting process, which is part and parcel of slowing down, which allows me to pay attention to the smallest of details that can make a big difference in a photograph. So let's jump into that. Here's a shot by Mats. There's no XF information on this one. And this looks like he was shooting at about waist level. I don't know if he was shooting from the hip or whether he physically got down in order to frame the shot, or whether he was using an LCD, an articulated LCD, in order to frame the composition. But here's the thing I wanted to point out. Look at how this subject's head and face is framed against the sky in the background. It's really defined very cleanly because you have this nice separation of the shoulder and the head against this white sky. It would have been just as easy to photograph this shot with this head juxtaposed against the building here. And that small detail is really important. It's something that I try to be as conscious of as possible, is unwanted juxtapositions. In a street scene, there's a lot of stuff that's happening, so you don't always have control over what's in front or behind a subject. But nevertheless, as the photographer, you need to be aware of it when you're shooting, because those juxtapositions make or break a photograph. Those juxtapositions can really make the photograph sing, or they can just ruin it in ways that most of us have experienced at one point or another. I always talk about scanning the edges of your frame, being aware on what's on the edges, because so many distractions tend to happen along the edges of the frame because we're so focused on what's at the center. We're not paying particular attention to what's happening at the edges, and you always have this stuff that comes in that ruins the shot. Here, we're still focused on the subject, but we're looking at, okay, what's behind the subject. I think that everything here works pretty nicely. I like sort of the layered quality of the shot here, where we have the building. We got this great light hitting the facade here. We have these different people here at different distances, and I think it works really nicely. We have this guy with his scowl about to walk across the street. The light's hitting him beautifully. We have this guy on the phone. We have this figure in the hat. We have this woman smiling. We have this woman moving past. We even have this figure about to enter the door. And all these different people are playing a role in this scene and in this moment. And then we have this guy here with this intent look on his face and this very dramatic lighting, side lighting that's hitting him. But the reason we focus so much on him is because of this contrast that's created by his dark skin, especially made more pronounced by the deep shadow on the side of his face, and this clean, almost white backdrop. That's really key here, because he becomes the anchor of the shot, not just because he's in focus, not just because he's the brightest element of the frame, but because we create, or Matt here creates, this wonderful contrast that guides our eye here. And we also have a lot of other stuff happening, like these diagonal lines. You see, if you look at these, if I could draw on this thing, you would see all these lines that are sort of just leading to him. Moving down to the lower angle is probably a critical part of the success here, because if he was shooting this at an eye level, undoubtedly there would have been a lot of other stuff in the background that would have reduce the ability to cleanly define him here. So all of this stuff plays really, really well, but that attention to detail is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Is not only what's happening all over your frame, but what are you placing in front or behind your subject so that they can read as cleanly as possible to eliminate the possibilities of distractions. Now here's a shot by Michel Guillet. No information here on the camera, but this is a lovely shot of these people sitting on the bench, and we have this fellow here who's sort of the contrarian in this photograph, who's facing away from the other people that are here. I'm assuming that they all know each other, and for whatever reason he decided to just face the other way, and it just makes for this lovely break in pattern. That's one of the things I've talked about before, this idea of looking for patterns and waiting for something that sort of breaks the pattern. Well, he's that in this shot. So you have this wonderful pattern that's here and him breaking it up, and the light and everything is good on him. But pay attention to what's happening up here with these two figures in the background. We have this figure with the dark top and what I assume were jeans, and this woman standing next to him. And this fellow here is juxtaposed immediately behind this guy. And for me, if I were shooting this, that's something that I would have to be aware of. I wouldn't just be seeing this person here and thinking, okay, I'll use a wide aperture to blow the background out of focus. Yeah, that's part and parcel of it. But I see this and I kind of go, okay, I don't want this figure directly, immediately behind my subject. What can I do? And the remedy for this would have been a slight shift to the right, to just allow him to sit here in order to create some separation between him. Now, this would have resulted in this girl moving over to about here, jutting out from here. So not only would I had to likely have shifted slightly to the right, but I would have gone down to completely eliminate her from the frame. So the only person that would be in the background would have been him, and he would have been in that space here. Some people will go, oh, I'll just clone him out. Yeah, you can clone him out, but part of what my practice is that I don't want to just depend on Photoshop or Lightroom to take care of this stuff afterwards. I want to be conscious enough that when I'm looking through my viewfinder or looking at my LCD, that I see that stuff, and then I can make the choices in order to eliminate it. Now, some people may think I'm nitpicking. I mean, this is still a wonderful shot, no doubt. But when I'm shooting, I'm trying to be so focused and so present and so in that moment that when I see potential distractions like this, I can make those small choices that will help improve the shot and make them that much better. And most of the time, all I have to do is make these micro adjustments. It's just slightly shifting my camera to the left or to the right, or moving up or moving down. Or it doesn't involve a big change. It just means just making the smallest of changes, which dramatically transforms and changes the photograph. Now here's a shot by Goran Petkovski, shooting this with an Nikon on film, and he scanned it in with a cool scan. Love this shot. The arms, the gestures here are all wonderful. I mean, I love how these hands come in from the top edges of the frame, how it's repeated with all these girls who are practicing gymnastics, how this girl here is coming into the frame and coming into this negative space. I mean, all of these elements are coming in just really, really beautifully. I love the shot, and she's just so cleanly defined against this background, much like the first shot we were talking about of a guy walking on that street. Here, this brick wall creates this clean background or backdrop for her to be completely defined. But again, I'm going to be paying attention to details, and one of the things I would be aware of is this guy here that seems to be growing out of this young girl's hip, right? And then we also have this pole here that's coming out. And what could I do? And there's not a whole lot that I could do. I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't really know exactly how all this stuff was sort of playing out. But if I know that this guy's coming in, part of it is like, is he just standing there and helping her, or are they actually moving across? I'm assuming that she's on a balance beam or something like that. So it may be that he's fixed on this position, or as she's moving across the balance beam, he will start moving forward and create a more clean read of him against the wall. If that's not happening, then I have to decide, well, can I shift over slightly to the right to create some separation but still maintain all the wonderful stuff that's happening here in the frame. That being said, I would have to also be aware of that pole. If I shift it over to the right, this is not going to eliminate this pole at all. All it's going to do is going to change its relationship to her here. So if I shift it over to the right to get a more cleaner read on him, this pole would probably be right over her left shoulder. But that's one of the things you want to be paying attention to. Yes, I can't get it. I can't completely eliminate it as a distraction from the frame, right? But I'm still aware of it. I'm still seeing it. I'm still making a conscious choice to include that. And by shifting over to the right, I could have completely obscured this area here by this person's thigh across the frame. Because this doesn't ruin the shot for me. But again, I would be aware of that. And then make that micro adjustment in order to make it clean. Now, this moment is absolutely very, very fluid, right? So things are changing second to second to second to second. So that slight shift to the right would mean that this moment, as it was captured, would not be the very same moment when I shifted over to my right. I can only hope that after I make that adjustment, that whatever magical stuff I'm feeling is inherent to this moment, to this scene, to this action, is going to be maintained. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But the mistake is to simply start shooting, hoping that everything is coming together nicely. And if you're not vigilant about these small details, you can shoot and shoot and shoot, and you can get all this wonderful action stuff, but the distractions can diminish the impact of the shot. And when you take a look at it, you'll get, oh God, why didn't I see that? Why did I make a choice to do something differently so I could have a cleaner composition? That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's about owning everything in that frame and making a conscious decision to not only include it or exclude it, but to make choices that lead to you to say, okay, if I'm going to keep this, this is where I want it in the frame. And this can only happen by slowing down, about not being so anxious and so, hyper to just get the shot at all costs, that you're not paying attention. People will spend a bunch of time in Photoshop cloning stuff out that they should have seen when they were shooting. And if you don't get into the practice of seeing that stuff when you're shooting, it's hard to be able to say with any confidence that you're going to become a better photographer, maybe a better Photoshopper, but not necessarily a better photographer. Here's a shot by Lulu. Again, no extra information. He always here. Olympus. He's using a film. And look at how cleanly this guy reads here. This is the exact opposite, right? Again, with the previous shot, the first shot, it was a clean sky. But here we have this sort of dark wall, and he's really cleanly defined here, surrounded by all these different elements. I guess he's selling these paintings and this globe and all this stuff, and he's just sitting there. And all of this stuff here plays really, really well. I mean, all the paintings, all the elements stand out really, really cleanly. And then you have him here. And again, he's the greatest point of contrast is between his face and this dark wood. And that's the kind of attention you want to pay. If his head was juxtaposed against the edge of that frame, that would be a distraction for me. So I would choose my position just like Alex did here, to cleanly frame him. And take a look at everything that's happening along the edges of the frame. I mean, everything here works. I mean, I don't know what this stuff is here coming from the roof line, but I kind of like the contrast that it creates here. It creates a nice balance rather than just being completely black. I mean, you could crop that out, but that doesn't bother me that much. I probably would crop it in slightly to get rid of these like little pieces of whatever this stuff is, which is something from the roof line. It might be interesting to see what this looks like cropped out, but again, sometimes I'm including stuff like this along the edges of my frame just because it feels right, because I feel it adds a nice balance to it. I used to be I would crop out stuff like this completely just to get a cleaner frame. But sometimes those things on the periphery can help create this balance. It's really hard to describe it any more than that. So that something isn't too weighted too much for the bottom or the edge or the right or the left. But it's important to pay attention. We got this little triangle here, which I guess is, I don't know if it's a box or whether it's something on the ground. I don't know what this was here, but obviously if you didn't want to cut off this foot, you had to include that in the frame. Now we are cutting off the right foot here, and we usually don't want to cut feet at the joints, in this case the ankle. That's something you usually want to avoid. But again, I don't know what was here at the bottom of the frame. If we included that whole foot, there may have been some elements down here that were distracting, that were an issue, but it's something to keep aware of. All right, and here we have this last shot by Dominic Bugatti, and no XF information, but love this shot in a subway. I love photographing in subways. It's just wonderful opportunities. The lights are crap often. You're often having to shoot ISO 3200, 6400, really high ISOs, because it's not really conducive for photography, but you can produce some really cool shots. Love this shot of this kid waiting for the subway car, his head against the wall, and look at just the overall shot, right? It plays really, really nicely, especially in color. The blue, the way his color of his skin is just lovely in relationship to these sort of off-white tiles, the red scarf, these figures in the background. Everything here is coming together really, really nicely. This is an image that probably would work just as good as a black and white, if not as a color shot. So I have very few complaints about this shot at all. That being said, the one thing I am paying attention to is this placement of the nose and the way it crosses this line here of the wall. And I know some people are going to think I'm incredibly anal for saying this, but I would have liked to have had him not bisected by that wall and have slightly shifted the camera to the left so that his entire profile would have been defined by this wall. This shot is still wonderful, but for me as a photographer, I would be conscious of that. I would need to be conscious. I am conscious of this kind of stuff when I'm shooting, and when I have the opportunity to do it, when I have the benefit of being able to take more than one shot, when I'm able to sort of linger and really explore that frame, I'm making these small adjustments. So if I was taking the shot and I had the opportunity, I would slightly shift my camera to the left, just to probably no more than an inch, in order to get a clean read off the nose there. And I don't mean to come off as if I'm micromanaging these photographers and their choices. I hope it doesn't come off that way. What I'm hoping to stress is this whole idea is how much are you owning the frame? How much attention to detail are you practicing in your own photography? Are you in such a rush to get the shot or move on to the next shot that you're just snapping away and only really carefully looking at your compositions when you are looking at the images on your computer? Are you repeatedly experiencing that frustration of taking a look at your photographs and going, damn it, this could have been a great shot if I'd only seen this, if I'd only seen that, if I'd only made this change or that change? That's why it's important to slow down. That's why it's so important to really carefully look through that viewfinder, look at that LCD screen, and not rush yourself. and not feel like, oh, I can only make one shot, or being lazy and only making one shot. How you just completely exhaust all the possibilities in order to ensure that you get that shot, that when you do see it on the computer, it just affirms every choice that you made as a photographer in that moment. All right, so I hope that's helpful. We almost have 2,000 people here contributing images to the to our Flickr group, which is amazing. Every week when I go to approve people, I'm just astounded by how many people are watching these videos, to the point that they're adding themselves to the Flickr group. It's just fantastic. Really excited about this part of the work that we're doing. And so feel free, if you're watching this for the first time and you're not part of this community, to just go to the Flickr group, go to the Candid Frame, and I'll be glad to add you. And also, if you're finding us for the first time and you've never heard of the Candid Frame, check us out at thecandidframe.com. It's an interview show in which I feature conversations with some of the world's best emerging and established photographers. The podcast usually gets released every week on Sunday night. And we're almost at episode 300. That's coming in a couple of weeks. But you can download practically every episode of the show by just downloading the Candid Frame app, which is available for Windows, iOS, and Android. You can find links for that on the Candid Frame website. And if you like what you're seeing in this video, please subscribe. Just click on the button that you see in the lower right-hand corner. All right. Thanks again for joining me. And go out and make some pictures, and I'll see you next time.